Thank you, Mark. Ladies and gentlemen, I promise to make just a few comments on a subject which is very central to cultural diplomacy: arts and culture, a platform for peace. In 1999, the Palestinian author Edward Said and the Israeli conductor Daniel Barenboim founded the West Eastern Divan. You heard about them from ex-President Yusupovich earlier today. The Divan is an orchestra of young classical musicians from Israel, Palestine, and other Arab countries. This project is still alive and reminds us of the potential of music to bridge differences between conflicting parties. The founders of the Divan say that it shall promote equality, harmony, and understanding. And it is a project against ignorance. Ignorance is very much at the roots of many of our problems today. A few months ago, I attended the opening of an arts exhibition in Berlin. 4 visual artists, 2 Ukrainians, 1 Russian, and 1 Belarusian, together presented their works under the headline Reconciliation. It was a moving moment to see these 4 ladies together presenting their pictures. This month, some well-known opera singers are preparing the premiere of Tchaikovsky's Pic Dame at a great Spanish opera house. The singers are from Ukraine, Russia, Georgia, Armenia, Germany, and United States. They are working very well together. These are 3 beautiful examples of functioning cultural diplomacy at non-official level. Very often it takes individual initiatives to meet at a human level and break the walls of conflict and hatred. Since the fall of the Berlin Wall, and the Iron Curtain, Europe has been seen as a soft power champion in the world, for good reasons. After all, we have peace after thousands of years of frequent wars, and now a rather open and borderless society for citizens. European values constitute the core of the Human Rights Declaration of the United Nations 1948, and of course also for the European Declaration on Human Rights. Some of these values are contested today in some parts of the world, but we know that they could still guide humanity in the fight for a better world. European values are also basic in the implementation of cultural diplomacy for peace and understanding. European arts and culture is extremely rich and attractive, and it should really fill each European with enormous pride. These values and the arts once made the legendary president of the European Commission, Jacques Delors, to say that European cohesion is so much more than economy and politics. Europe has a soul, he said, and nota bene, he meant culture in both EU countries and neighboring European countries. But, as we all know, culture is often politically abused in propaganda or hate speech, or as our weapon against the other, or relatively recently, European culture is accused by other cultures of being colonialist by nature. And in addition, culture, as many of you know, is mostly the first target when a finance minister is looking for possibilities of savings in the budget. I recall the true story that Winston Churchill was asked in the middle of the Second World War to cut the cultural budget of the government. But he answered, we can't cut the cultural budget. We are defending Britain. And if we cut culture, what are we then defending? Today's growing polarization, both between and within states, is a big threat against a flourishing cultural life. What Professor Huntington called the clash of civilizations, and now, of course, the Russia-Ukraine war, is making life difficult for artists. Insecurity, fear, self-censorship, and so on are growing. A few days ago, a well-known Scandinavian artist said to me that there's a risk that the whole art sector is imploding. She was very serious when saying this. Another form, well, and let's hope that she's not right. Another form of important cultural diplomacy is sports diplomacy. It's often mentioned as even bigger reconciliation potential than the arts. After all, Football World Cup, the world's biggest religion, football, is something engaging people, and of course there are rivalries, there are chauvinism, etc., but it is also uniting. Peacekeeping was, no doubt, a main argument for Baron de Coubertin and his colleagues when the modern Olympic Games started in the 1890s. All sports events are definitely contributing to friendship and understanding. But sports are also not immune to political priorities. History and presence are full of boycotts and sanctions. And hijacking sports for propaganda purposes, or the practice of so-called sports washing for concealing a bad human rights situation, are really deplorable. Since February 2022, a new geopolitical situation has emerged. Surprisingly to some people, particularly to President Putin perhaps, it united Europe. European action was immediate. Unfortunately, it also led to, for instance, that we forgot Afghanistan. The politicians and the media concentrated all resources on the Ukrainian war. It's close to our heart, but the tragedy of Afghanistan we must not forget. From a European perspective, a new Iron Curtain seems to be there now. Most platforms for reconciliation seem to be gone. And this time, disastrous and lethal military activities are accompanied with attacks on culture and lifestyle of the other side. In my youth, I studied Russian, and it seems that not much has changed since 1879, when Dostoevsky published the Karamazov Brothers. A typical Russian then, and it seems also now, is always torn between an admiration for the creativity, the affluence, and the liberal lifestyle of Western Europe on one hand, and a religiously based hatred against immorality and impiety on the other hand. Bridging such differences will be one of the many challenges when the war is over. I know that common denominators can be found, but much time and patience will be needed. Ladies and gentlemen, the works of music, of visual arts, of literature usually live much longer than politics and wars. Thank God. Arts and culture is an essential end in itself, ars pro arte, but they can play an important role as platform for peace and understanding. Arts and culture can play this role if central and local governments give the cultural budgets strong financial support. And arts is more than a market product. If we fight ignorance by giving priority to education at all levels, with more arts and humanity in curriculum, and less social media hatred, backdoor nonsense, fake news, etc. And thirdly, if politicians, media, and citizens make real efforts to come out of their respective bubbles and become open for dialogue with people of other opinions. We all know that democracy has a crisis, both in quality and in quantity. But a friend of mine, a political science professor at Oxford University, has given me a very useful definition of democracy, which I have seen nowhere else. He says the following: democracy is the art of carrying disappointment. The art of carrying disappointment. Well, doesn't sound very sexy, perhaps, but in a world of 8 billion people and more, a very complicated world, we will never be able to cooperate constructively and understand each other if we are not prepared to make compromises with patience, understanding, and trust. Thank you very much. And thank you, Mr. Minister, for the hospitality.